Well, this looks familiar. The Five Bloods is the new Spike Lee joint, and this time it's a Netflix film, and this time it's a genre film. It's a war action adventure film, and Spike Lee is an immensely fascinating filmmaker. I haven't seen that much of his work. I've seen barely a dozen of his films, but they're always the best way to describe them is Spike Lee embraces the concept of film, of cinema as something fake, as something artificial. There are a lot of moments where he purposefully destroys the suspension of disbelief. You have fourth wall breaks, you have hectic editing, you have using archival footage in a very in-your-face way. And for some people it doesn't work, and for others it does. And thankfully for me it works really, really well. And The Five Bloods is a fascinating film. It is... Part of it's a Vietnam War film, part of it is an adventure film, part of it is more of a social drama. And the film is about a group of four friends, four Vietnam veterans, who go back to Vietnam to find the remains of one of their fallen soldiers, part of the Five Bloods group. And also they found a treasure while they were there in the war, and they're gonna try to find it again, to go back to the US with a shit ton of gold and a shit ton of cash. And when I went into this film, for some stupid reason, I thought, well, with this premise, how is Spike Lee even gonna put social commentary and political commentary in there? But as you might expect, he puts plenty of it, right from the opening minutes. This film, just like other Lee joints, it's immensely topical, especially given the times we're living in right now. And boy oh boy, it's great. And it's a great film because it is crazy messy, which might sound like a contradiction, but this is almost a paradox of a film. Spike Lee gives zero shits about editing conventions, about suspension of disbelief, about the 180-degree line. He does whatever he wants, and I applaud him for that. I absolutely applaud him for that. The film thematically, it talks about the issues of race, it talks about the Vietnam War, how it's been a pointless war, it talks about the presidencies, how the US have mostly had really shitty presidents who have not done any good for the people, especially for people of color. And you see that with Nixon during the Vietnam War, and you see it with Trump nowadays, and they mention that explicitly in the film. One of the main characters, played by Delroy Lindo, who is absolutely phenomenal in this. He gives probably the best performance of his career, and I've always liked him. He is a Trump supporter, which adds a lot of interesting dynamics to the group, makes this far different than what I was expecting it to be. The film also tackles issues of race identity, of black power, and all those things that, again, are relevant nowadays. And the film is also a strong homage not only to Apocalypse Now with its more war elements in the flashbacks, but mostly to Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which coincidentally is Spike Lee's favorite film and an absolute masterpiece if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorite films from the 40s. And the idea of gold just corrupting people, of greed, taking over your ideas, your ideals. And again, it's a long film, and it might seem like he's trying to bite more than he can chew, but it all works. At least for me, it did. I know some people are finding this a bit overlong or finding it messy to a fault. I love just how almost raw this felt. I like films that aren't completely like polished and super smooth, where you cannot. It's almost like the film just exists. It doesn't feel like someone made it. This one, you can feel people's handprints on it, and the style. It's very, very stylish film. You have the opening and closing of the film. The opening part and the closing. They are shot with standard letterbox. Like conventional cinematography, mid-shots, close-ups. Then you have the flashbacks, which are told of the Vietnam War, which have a very interesting casting choice with the actors. You're gonna see what I mean. But it fits thematically with elements of PTSD, of not really getting over traumatic experience like going to war. And those scenes are shot in 4:3 with a very specific color palette that does remind you of the footage, of news footage from the 1960s and 70s of Vietnam. And also plays in some of the historical elements like the presence of Hanoi Anna on the radio, things like that. And then you have, which was absolutely my favorite part of the film when I really got into it strongly, once you get to the proper adventure portion, when they are set out, they're going in the jungle to find the remains of the friend and to find the gold. The film just goes full widescreen, just opens up, and it's beautiful, and it's full of wide shots of these gorgeous vistas, beautiful color. It's incredibly shot, and it's not only just incredibly shot, but the soundtrack, it's incredible. It's just powerful. It sells the element of adventure, but also the drama of it, the excitement of this whole affair. And you have a lot of sweet Marvin Gaye songs. He's one of my favorite artists, and there's an a cappella rendition of one of his most classic songs that just gave me chills the way it's used in this film. And it's also like effects wise, I didn't find it to be cheap particularly. I quite enjoyed most of the effects in this. It looks great. And there's a bit of gore in this. It's quite violent, surprisingly enough, but there's a moment of gore that's brutal as fuck. So if you're squeamish, I would still say watch the film because it's just a short sequence, but oh boy, it's a memorable moment. It's quite a memorable moment. But still, The Five Bloods was a surprise. I do like Spike Lee's work. I've loved a couple of his films like BlacKkKlansman, Malcolm X, and Do the Right Thing especially. But this one feels special. This one, it's a raw film, it's ambitious, it's bold, audacious filmmaking on display here. And I loved it. One of the best films I've seen so far in the year, definitely, even though I haven't seen that much, unfortunately, because COVID and whatever. But absolutely watch The Five Bloods. It came out at the best possible time, and especially with the ending part of it, it just resonated very strongly. There's some great emotional bits in this, the cast, fantastic, and as I say, presentation, sound, all great, absolutely great. This is a great film all around, even though, again, it's gonna be divisive for the filmmaking, for the strength, for the stark political approach in it, but to each their own. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's good as well. But still, guys, have you watched The Five Bloods, and which is your favorite Spike Lee film? Tell me in the comments below. Thanks always for remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.